What's going on, good people? Welcome to another edition of the Bitchuation Room. I am your host, Francesca Fiorentini. I am so happy to have you here. I'm so glad you pressed play. I'm so glad because we have a very good show. It was gonna be completely international focused, and then Lindsey Graham just decided to try and ban abortions, and so we had to talk about that. Waking nightmare that we live in. But we've got such a good show because journalist Michael Fox is joining us, who has been covering Brazil, the rise of Bolsonaro, and now in advent of his potential reelection, what's happening, what's going down in the biggest country in South America, though not the only country. Okay, vamos Argentina. Sorry, I just had to get that in there. Also, your boy Nato Green is back on the stream, in the cast, and we will talk about the crown, the monarchy. How do we feel now that, she kicked the bucket? And we've got King Charles, which suddenly sounds like scarier, and that's just the sexist in me being like, I don't like kings. Queens are great, like Yaz Queen, yay. King, starting to work, scaring me. And of course, we're going to talk about, like I said, Lindsey Graham. And then we're going to end with talking about all the little white childhoods that are being ruined by having black hobbits and black elves in the new Lord of the Rings prequels. So let's just drive the knife in further in these white supremacists and ask how we can ruin even more childhoods from fragile men. So stay tuned for that. Also, speaking of fragile people in the fantasy world, Nato and I are going to stay on for a bonus episode for all the patrons talking about J.K. Rowling. Yeah, that's right. I haven't read a single Harry Potter, and I'm not about to start because I stand with the trans community. That's right. My lack of reading suddenly behooves me, and I am now absolved. Now I'm on the right side of history. Everyone who read the Harry Potter series, you guys are on the wrong side of history. Sorry. But no, we're going to talk about that because she's got a new book series out, and it is strikingly similar to her own story. But is it? So we're going to talk about that for all the patrons. And again, if you are a patron, God love you. And if you, God, that's such a Biden thing. Now I just want to say, God love you. And if you, although he says it when he hates someone, but the point is patreon.com/bitchuationroom. All of your bonus episodes, we're talking 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes of content. Extra stories. And you can tip the show TBR-live on Venmo, TBR live on Cash App. But again, I urge you to become a patron. Remember, there's tons of perks. You get 20% off all merch. You get free merch if you're a top tier patron. You get access to the AMAs. You get access to the bonus content. You get access to my maternity leave content. I'm going to be doing the weekly roundups because you know how much they slap. And that'll be fun. So also, I just want to shout out some, the Twitch chat. If you guys are listening as a podcast, this means nothing to you, but it means something to me because Punch Up Dragon resubscribed and Squirrely Coney resubscribed. And I just thank you. Rianne Lynn 86 giving out 2 community subs. This means nothing, except it means a lot to the people on Twitch and the Frantifa that is there. Also, please rate this show a 5-star review on iTunes. Carol DeMom says, I love Francesca's sharp insight, clear commentary, wry attitude, and calmer volume. I like her calmer volume. Are you saying other commentators are shrill? While remaining unapologetically progressive and, get this, iconoclastic. Thank you. Lowers pixelated glasses onto face. I forgot which meme that is. I think it's I'm gonna fuck it up and sound like a mom because I'm almost a mom. Guys, let's get into it. Let's get into this week. I don't have a lot, but this is What Are You Bitching About? I'm going to save what I'm bitching about till later, and you'll see why. Again, there's a lot to talk about, but I will say, as a pregnant person who's in their third trimester, the inner groin, really, really painful. Just like all them ligaments. Yeah, they are on fire. Apparently it's called lightning crotch, and I have it. So I am getting bigger by the hour, and there's just a perpetual inner groin pain. So please become a patron. I'm just kidding. No. Please send me your condolences. I'm doing my stretches, I'm doing everything, but damn, the body is going like, oh, it's about to get a whole lot worse. Just you wait. You're gonna need this. So yeah, I'm just complaining about inner groin pain, and that's pretty much it, because I got a lot more to bitch about later on in the show. But I want to bring in, for the hour, my guest, comedian, labor organizer, father. Please welcome Nato Green.
Shalom, bitches.
What's up, Nato? Good to have you back.
Good to see you. You just said that you're almost a mother, and then you said that you're in the third trimester. And as far as Republicans are concerned, you've been a mother for 4 trimesters already. So
since you were born.
Yeah.
No, it's hard because like I'm getting to the moment where I look at my cat and I'm like, see, that's a life. This less a life, but it's moving enough to the point where I'm like, no, okay, maybe this also rivals cat.
Yeah.
And then of course when it's born, we will put the cat in a box and say free, right, and push it down a river like Moses. Anyway,
life begins when you're old enough to have your first TikTok account.
Oh, so it will never begin for me. I know, we're on TikTok. Are you on TikTok?
I think I created an account once, and then I couldn't figure out. Someone sent me a link of people lip syncing my bits, and so I went to look at it, and then I couldn't figure out how to TikTok worked, and I never looked at it again. And I'm like, if it's important, it'll turn up on my Instagram or my Twitter, and that's, fool me once, fucking Periscope.
Dude, I had the audio of one of my videos completely removed from TikTok because it cannot understand sarcasm, which is pretty much the language I speak 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. So all I said was "gas the Jews," and then they took the whole thing down. It was an ironic "gas the Jews." I was being Hitler. I was fragile. It was a bit.
Yeah, no, you were just talking about farting in bed with Matt.
Yeah. Nato, what are you bitching about today?
Francesca, what I'm bitching about today is the movie Eyes Wide Shut. It just turned up on Netflix. I didn't watch it when it came out, and it was it came out in '99. Famous Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman vehicle. It's Stanley Kubrick's last film that was released posthumously, I think, and the movie is fucking ridiculous. First of all, it's 2.5 hours long, and it has the most repetitive dialogue. It feels like they're doing call and response, or like, praying in synagogue, where a solid third of the movie is people repeating back what someone just said to them. Do you want to go outside? Do I want to go outside? Yes. Do you want to go outside? Yes, I want to go outside.
That's most plays. You realize that, right?
Yeah, but it's like you've written a script or two in your day. Like, haven't you been through where they're like, no extraneous words, get in and get out as quickly as possible, all that kind of stuff. And so there's that. Then the other thing is, for no good reason, I had it in my head that I knew that there was like a weird sex cult orgy bit.
Yes.
And and I had it in my head that Vincent Schiavelli was in it. He is, Google image him, you'll be like, oh, that guy.
Mhm.
And so I spent the whole movie being like, when is Vincent Schiavelli and his weird ass face going to show up?
Why would you think? Yeah, Vincent Schiavelli. Oh, okay, yeah. Why
That
would
guy.
you? He's not hot enough to be in Eyes Wide Shut. Are you kidding me?
No, but he is hot enough to be, or he's not. He's weird enough to be in a creepy weirdo orgy scene with like a bunch of like, fucking skull and
So you're like,
crossbones.
when do we get
Jeff,
Vincent Schiavelli's dick?
well, just like clearly there was a bunch of like rich New York, parasite Jeffrey Epstein homies, like on Fuck Island in Eyes Wide Shut. But my biggest problem with the movie is that the plot of the entire plot of the movie is you have a hot married couple,
Yes.
and like leaving aside the whole thing about Tom Cruise's like B story as a doctor, where he goes through the movie and he keeps trying to get into places, and then he'll be like, well, I am a doctor, and then he shows them his medical ID card, like it's like the way that cops show their badge.
Right. I'm a
And
doctor.
I'm a doctor. Here's my medical ID card, which is not a thing that doctors ever do. And he's like, it's all these people in, like everybody's on the Upper East Side and has like an 18-room condo, like Only Murders in the Building style. But then, so you have a hot couple who has a apparently perfectly satisfying sex life. And then at some point, Nicole Kidman's character says that she once was attracted to another guy and thought about like being into it, did nothing, and then he goes out and tries to fuck everyone in the world. Like he's like,
The
oh,
most fragile dude ever.
yeah. She says, yeah, I saw a hot guy once, and then he ran out and just started running through the streets of New York, being like, I'm filling all the holes now. Like he tries to find a prostitute. Then the next day he goes back and tries to find the prostitute again. Then he tries to fuck her roommate. Then the roommate's like, oh, that other lady, she has AIDS now. And then he's like, well, I guess we're not fucking that. Like then he tries to go to the orgy.
I remember, okay, hang on. Let me just interrupt you because we probably shouldn't talk about this the whole time, though. Go off, King.
Yeah.
I watched it maybe when I was like 18 and didn't really have a sense of like a lot. And I was like, oh, it was actually really good. And it wasn't just like a weird culty sex scene the whole time. It was about like his jealousy. It was about their like relationship. And it was well done until at some point, probably when Kubrick died, there's a scene that apparently they did like 100 takes of, which is a sign that he should probably be like hospitalized rather than continue to like film. And that scene is the most boring, awful scene. And the whole picture, like I just wanted like the film to be melted right then and there. It just shuts down.
I wonder what scene it was.
It's like the conversation scene with him and the old dude at the end, and they're just like spinning around and it just never ends.
Oh yeah, right. Where the old it's a whole thing. I mean,
but it was a good movie. It was good until it's good until the end.
Well, here's the thing: is it's a well done movie.
Yeah,
but it's a well done movie about horrible people being horrible.
Yes.
And like,
do you not like Seinfeld? Because that's horrible people being horrible, but it's funny.
No, I mean, this is true of like a lot of our like cherished cultural artifacts of the past. Is with these things that we have sentimentality about, and then you go back and you're like, oh, this is just this great cinematic masterpiece. In hindsight, actually was just 2 hours of misogyny.
You know what? Last thing on this. I watched the movie Splash again. That is an hour and a half of misogyny because Tom Hanks's character is like, ew, you're a fucking mermaid? Gross. You like, and then this is after he proposes marriage to her, falls madly in love, and then throws her to the cops to arrest her just because she's a mermaid. Which we'll be talking about mermaids later on. I thought that was bullshit. He's like, no, you're a mermaid and you didn't tell me, and fuck you, you should be locked up, you freak. And you're like, You were just about to marry her. Does that mean nothing to you just because she's got flippers? All right, we got to move on. We're getting into the week. NATO hates film. Everything's fine. This was a week where Steve Bannon turned himself into a New York Supreme Court where he pled not guilty to 6 counts of money laundering and conspiracy in connection with stealing money from donors who gave to a foundation to build the wall on the U.S.-Mexico border and definitely deserved to be defrauded. Like, if any donors deserve to be defrauded, they did. Like, what's the legal happy ending to this story? Like, that Bannon uses the money to build the wall? No, fuck that. It's bullshit. Also, on his way into the courtroom, he plugged his podcast, which, say what you will about Steve Bannon, like, that's good promo. It's good promo. Jeff Bezos' rocket Blue Origin burst into flames at 29,000 feet. It was not carrying people, but objects. And considering what Bezos thinks are objects, we can assume many, many Amazon workers died in the fire. 72 House Democrats are urging Speaker Pelosi not to include changes to oil and gas permits and the Mountain Valley Pipeline in a temporary funding bill, stipulations that Joe Manchin was pinky promised in order to get his vote for the other climate bill. Yes, they made him a deal that he gets to destroy the environment if he votes for the environmental bill, which means bribing Congress has less dignity than bribing a child. This is like, hey, if you eat your vegetables now, I'll let you murder every celery stalk on the face of the earth. Okay? The DOJ has issued 40 new subpoenas to Trump aides in connection to the alternate slate of electors plot, which might have something to do with Trump's weird meeting with about a dozen aides on the green of his Bedminster golf club. They were pictured without any golf clubs, but they seem to have been drawing straws. That's what I think they were doing. They were just drawing straws, and Trump's like, I got the short one. That means you protect me, right? And finally, 115,000 American rail workers will strike as soon as Friday if they don't reach an agreement with industry for time off and any sick days. They don't have any sick days at this point. The strike could cost the U.S. $2 billion a day and be an economic disaster if an agreement isn't met. Biden is in a hugely tough spot. And you got to wonder, is he going to break the strike? Trains are his most precious and beloved form of transportation. This would be like Mr. Rogers putting on his conductor hat and getting ready to go to the world of make-believe, but instead throwing trolley at the wall and then screaming into the camera, grow up, you little shits. For everything else, this is the week where. This was the week where England's longest-serving monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, finally croaked at the age of 96. She was queen for 70 years. And I don't know much about Queen Elizabeth other than her fictional portrayals in The Crown. Love that series. Also, Naked Gun. Great queen appearance. It wasn't actually her. Should have been. Could have been. But no. And now we're all having a conversation about colonialism. And come to find out, a lot of people don't think it was that bad. So that's been fun. So just so you guys know, the British are still the heads of state or the British monarchy is still heads of state in 14 countries, including Antigua and Barbuda. They're known as Commonwealth realms. They're a vestige of the British Empire. The realms are different from other members of the Commonwealth nations, which consist of dozens of countries that were colonized by the British, but ditched the monarchy in favor of a republic. 17 countries left the British monarchy during the Queen's reign, and the last nation to do so was Barbados in 2021. She oversaw like a lot of fucked up shit. Repression of the Mau Mau in Kenya in the 50s, Operation Banner in Ireland, Northern Ireland, which lasted for 4 decades, like a 1956 attempt to get the Suez Canal, which was like, what? And then, of course, the Falklands War, 1982. Let's see, she kind of always was able to sort of distance herself from a lot of that. But let's see, obviously India and Pakistan became independent nations in 1947. This was before she ascended is a sort of doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of the ways that those countries got their independence. Nigeria did the same in the following decade. Sri Lanka became a republic in 1972. And let's see. There are some... Yes. The Queen often seemed to benefit from a belief, this is from the New York Times, that she could be separated from Britain's at times callous rule. Queen Elizabeth was assigned little blame when the British authorities in Kenya tortured suspected Mau Mau rebels in the 50s, or after British forces fighting anti-colonial unrest used similar tactics against civilians in Cyprus in 1955 and Aden, Yemen in 1963. So, NATO, can you separate the Queen from the empire, the art, or the artist from the art, so to speak? Or is the whole thing canceled?
I think it's kind of cool that she was the last emperor. Like, you know, that what distinguishes her rule is the collapse of the British Empire.
Yes.
You know, it's not like the carnage that they inflicted at the end was worse than all the horrible things that they did during the empire. So, like, you know, good at you know, what a remarkable legacy to leave of failing to maintain the British Empire in spectacular fashion.
I mean, I think not the instances I mentioned were not graceful, but ultimately the writing was so on the wall that you're like, yeah, you needed to let them go because you don't have any other way to hold on to these colonies. But it is funny that, like, if she were American right now, Fox, instead of praising her and like sort of weirdly being royalist about it, they'd be like, this woman oversaw the downfall of the great American empire. You know, like, she let it all go to pieces.
If a man had been king.
Yup.
You know, I mean, and the thing that people don't say enough about Queen Elizabeth that I really think needs to be part of the, you know, as we reflect on her reign, is that she liked to fuck. She
was eyes wide shut up in Windsor Castle.
She was just super into coming. She was, I think, clearly comfortable being around pedophiles. And you know, I just think we need to put that out there into the world that the Queen really liked to fuck.
Now, when you're basing this on what?
I just think it would be a fun rumor to spread.
Oh.
Like, if all the Bitchuation room listeners were like, yeah, I heard the Queen really liked to fuck.
Yeah, we're inviting Michael Fox, journalist, is going to be discussing his deep dive into the Queen's sex life. I just thought it's because she owns so many pearl necklaces.
Bam.
Oh, but never inside. You can never come inside. I'm sorry. That being said, okay, there's some King Charles, who, by the way, has the fingers of Oscar Mayer sausages. Please, in your spare time, look this up. Holy shit, my man has some thicky fingies. He has said before about slavery. This was in, I don't know exactly what year this was, but this was recent. He said at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda, I want to acknowledge the roots of our contemporary association run deep into the most painful period of our history. I cannot describe the depths of my personal sorrow at the suffering of so many as I continue to deepen my own understanding of slavery's enduring impact. King Charles also apparently is like very pro renewable energy. He has visited the occupied territories in the West Bank. He's done some interesting things, none of which will make up for how he treated the princess and drove her to her death. That must be stated. But yeah, so it's unclear, but I'm like, at this point, 70 years, like, you had a good run. Can you just pack up the monarchy? And a lot of countries are now talking about that. Hang on. On Saturday, the Prime Minister of Antigua, and I don't know if it's Antigua, and Barbuda announced plans to hold a referendum on becoming a republic within 3 years. In Australia, the Bahamas, Belize, Canada, and Jamaica, debates have simmered for years about their democracy's ties to a distant kingdom and have started to heat up again. From the Caribbean to the Pacific, people are asking, why do we swear allegiance to a monarch in London?
Yeah, I mean, I also think, like, she was queen for 70 years, and her ascent, she was pretty young, comparatively. This motherfucker's 73. So, like, we have very few people alive remember her coronation, but it means that we're gonna like cycle some monarchs pretty fast coming up in the UK here. We're gonna get Charles, soon we're gonna end up with, I don't know, Andrew, Baron Trump. We're just gonna work down the list.
It's okay. So I have to play this because it was the best thing to happen. As her body, I believe, was being transported. By the way, in England right now, today, I believe, all operations are canceled. In addition to food banks are closed. So in honor of the Queen's death, your urgent operation, it needs to stop. And sorry, no foo-foo for you. I don't know if that's the right way to go. If you want to preserve the monarchy, it should be like everyone gets an operation. Oh, you don't need one? We're doing it anyway. Let's get that mole, baby. But here is the royal procession, and Prince Andrew, again, BFFs with Jeffrey Epstein, has settled out of court around basically trafficking and sex with a minor in the year 2001, but settled more recently. Here is a kid yelling at him, and see if you can make out what he says. So that's in Edinburgh, and he says, Andrew, you're a sick old man. Just screaming at him. That kid proceeds to get tackled, arrested for saying that, and here's then what he had to say.
That powerful men shouldn't be allowed to commit sexual crimes and get away with it.
He says, I would say that powerful men shouldn't be able to commit sexual crimes and get away with it. Pretty good.
Pretty good. Did you enjoy the Lizzie in a Box video?
No.
Oh, it's amazing.
I mean, I haven't yet seen it to enjoy it.
It's an Irish football stadium when people found out that she had died, of a whole stadium of people in Ireland singing Lizzie's in a Box.
It's
savage.
Dumb. It's savage and it's great. I mean, I've watched and I posted an Argentine commentator, newscaster, just ripping her a new one, because Argentina, of course, was a country that the UK tried to colonize many times, was unsuccessful, but hey, brought football and some railways, and then ended up colonizing the Falklands, the Malvinas, which BT dubs, if you didn't know, a little tidbit, they have claims to Antarctica based on their ownership of the Falkland Islands, which houses 1,500 people. 1,000 of them are military personnel. It's just like a stupid random island, but it allows them claim over fresh water, fishing rights, and a bunch of other shit, in case you didn't think it mattered. I used to live there. Have I mentioned that you live there? So yeah, that was that. I'm not going to play this Meghan and Harry stuff because it's sort of a divergence from the main issue, which is colonialism bad, royalists dumb. But at some point on a bonus episode, or maybe on my Twitchuation room stream, I will talk about that, because Harry and Meghan got the fuck out, and they are so lucky they did. Because whether or not it was the Queen, what do they call it? Like the business, the operation, the firm, they call it, right? Like Windsor Palace is essentially the firm. The firm is racist and fucked up as shit. And like, the media and the crazy British tabloids run their goddamn lives. And so I don't care that you've got a deal for podcasts, for Netflix shows. Live your best life, Meghan and Harry. You are my prince and princess.
That's really, yeah. I mean, that video is really just a fucking advertisement for therapy.
Well, now we have to play it. Now that you said that, I'm playing one of them.
Okay.
Within the first 8 days of our relationship being made public was when it said Harry's girl almost straight out of Compton, and that her exotic DNA will be thickening the royal blood. We would get followed, photographed, chased, harassed. The clicking of cameras and the flashes of cameras makes my blood boil. It makes me angry. It takes me back to what happened to my mum and what I experienced when I was a kid.
That's enough.
But it went to a whole new depth with not just traditional media, but also social media platforms as well.
So that is from the documentary, The Me You Don't See. There's more, but I'm afraid they're going to copyright strike this show. And you know I ain't rolling in it unless you want to become a patron at patreon.com. I'm just kidding. But yeah, he's talking about like just the open racism. And then he was like, if I didn't leave, Meghan Markle talked about this with Oprah, like she had suicidal ideations. Like she basically was planning to kill herself. And the only reason she didn't was because she didn't want to do that to her husband. But she was like all about not, she was like, nope, this is too much. And so I'm getting chills. I'll talk about it. Maybe we'll do a little, I'll force Nato to talk about it in the bonus before we talk about JK. Let's move on. This was the week where Lindsey Graham introduced an abortion ban at 15 weeks of gestation, right at the end of the first trimester. There are, of course, exceptions, because he's just such a benevolent guy. Exceptions in the case of rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother, which we all know is horse shit. We'll talk about that in a second. This act is being called, get this, the Protecting Pain-Capable Unborn Children from Late-Term Abortions Act. And now, in case you're wondering, like, what? 15 weeks? Late term? Yeah, you'd be right. 15 weeks is not enough time to gestate a human. It is enough time to gestate a chinchilla. I'll have you know. It's about 110 weeks to gestate a chinchilla. 110 days, which is 15 weeks. So there you go. So no, full gestation of a human being, a human, which Lindsey Graham should know by now. He's been living on planet Earth, I don't know, at least 12 years, whenever the aliens dropped him off. It's 40 weeks. And by the way, I don't know why we're supposed to listen to him, because we all know how Lindsey Graham feels about vaginas. He feels the same way that he feels about them as he feels about Indian food. He's like, I tried it once. I didn't much care for it. Like that's But okay, so this bill talks about fetal development in really weird ways. So there's a lot of like, by 9 to 11 weeks of gestation, teeth as well as external genitalia begin to form. Like, ugh. Why are you talking about a fetus genitalia in your fucking bill, bro? Then, eye movements can be detected at 12 weeks. And then, of course, the biggest thing that this bill has in it is talking about pain and how much pain fetuses can feel, right? Pain receptors begin forming at 7 weeks. And substantial evidence indicates that children born missing the bulk of the cerebral cortex nevertheless experience pain. So, and again, Nato, this is an argument to stop abortions. And not only, first of all, is the 7 weeks you can feel pain untrue. In fact, just a few years ago, Republicans were debating whether it was 20 weeks. So the shit is it's all fucking arbitrary. They're just saying that. And it's not scientific. But also, like, if they think abortion is murder, they don't like abortion, and you're using pain as an excuse, it's like, if there is pain, isn't the final conclusion of that pain no more pain? Because if it's a life and you think it's murder, it not gonna feel nothing no more. Like, what murderer? Like, do they think that like extreme torture is happening in the womb when there's an abortion? Is this like fucking Rumsfeld torture tactics where it's like they waterboard and then electroshock the fetus before they actually extract it? That's not happening. It's not happening.
Yeah, I mean it's the Republican credo: life is pain, princess.
It's so upsetting to me because not only this pain shit is bullshit, it means nothing, but it also, like, because it is, I mean, let's leave aside people who want to be parents, like my inner groin pain and the pain I'm going to feel bringing a fucking new life into this world, the same way we all were brought into this goddamn world. But
and the pain you're going to feel when the person gets outside of your body and then grows up and says, "Mom, stop singing, you're embarrassing me."
Yeah, endless pain.
Yeah.
Just endless pain. But also, like, they act like they've figured out how to grow a human outside of the human uterus. Like, you can't, motherfucker, 15 weeks is not viable for life. 20 weeks is not viable for life. Arguably, 22, 25, most people say, most doctors, scientists will say it's 26 weeks for viability. Obviously, you're talking extensive NICU stay, like crazy intervention. Who knows the amount of like permanent, you know, if they survive at that time, it might be fine. They also might have permanent brain damage. Here they're saying like, no. It doesn't matter because 15 weeks is the cutoff. Mother, like, you can't, what, have you created something where they can survive in? No. So what about the person carrying that so-called life? What about when? Yeah.
Are you watching the new House of Dragons?
Yes, I am, but I didn't see the last episode, so don't spoil it for me.
I haven't seen it either. But in the first episode, there's the pregnant queen, and they're like, you have to choose between the mother and the child, and then they like chop her up and to save the child, and then they both die. And it's like watching that, being like, oh, this is Lindsey Graham's America. Lindsey Graham watching that, just like fully tumescent.
Yes. You know, I
like,
couldn't watch that. I just had to like listen, and I was like, Matt, tell me when it's over. Tell me when it's over. That is way too real for me. Yeah. But no, that's exactly what it is. That is Lindsey Graham's America. Oops, they both died.
Oops, they both died. Better get this dragon.
By the way, the carve-outs for rape, this is fun. She has to, in order to get the abortion, she has to have obtained counseling for the rape, obtain medical treatment for the rape or an injury related to the rape. It has to, if it's a minor, a government agency legally has to authorize to act on reports of child abuse, and those reports have to be to a law enforcement agency. So super easy bars to clear. And you have to like prove that you fought back. Also, if you can't prove that, then, oh my God, you totally asked for it. Wow, fun. So I was searching the bill. I was like, okay, what about ectopic pregnancies? What about wanted pregnancies? What about D&Cs and D&Es and people who are having miscarriages? What about safe practice? Nothing. Of course, nothing. Because they don't fucking care. This is not at all about protecting the life of the child. This is about making women and pregnant people second-class citizens and controlling their bodies. Because it wins elections? TBD, asshole.
Well, you know, I was about to say, like, I mean, to quote Dr. Strange, I think we're in the end game now. You know, I don't know if you've seen that stuff about like the degree to which the attacks on reproductive rights have like galvanized the, like, you know, people saying that they haven't seen this many younger women registering to vote ever in like by, you know, and that the swing in the elections that have happened, the swing towards Democrats have been like in the, you know, the like double digits in many cases. So it's like it seems like, And then there was a bunch of articles in the last week or so about how Republicans were running from the abortion record because it was, trying to be like, it's all about gas prices or whatever, because it's such a liability electorally. And so it seems like either it's just like they're going to win and it's going to be horrible, or this is like their, Hail Mary pass, so to speak.
They're doubling. It's amazing that they're doubling down on it. I mean, maybe it's Lindsey Graham was an inside job type situation because they know this is not polling well with people. And
Lindsey Graham, famous Democratic front group.
Yes. Here is Lindsey Graham, in case you didn't think he was a massive hypocritical piece of shit. Here he is just months ago saying that, of course, it's all about states' rights, that abortion should be left up to the states, and I would never introduce a federal ban on abortion.
I think states should decide the issue of marriage, and states should decide the issue of abortion. I have respect for South Carolina. South Carolina voters here, I trust, to define marriage and to deal with the issue of abortion, not 9 people on the court. That's my view.
There you go. By the way, the Senate in South Carolina did fail to pass a near total abortion ban, and I believe the current one is being upheld by a judge. But I mean, it's a matter of time before that falls. But you saw South Carolina on this show, representative realize the consequences of his actions, because he was like, oh shit, I guess people with miscarriages are bleeding to death in their homes. Oops. I guess that's what happens. So, I mean, that's exactly what he said. But no. But so, yeah, there's Graham. And he decided to reverse that decision. And now we have to learn about fetal development and their pain receptors at 7 weeks. Guys, no. It is not real. Stop fucking dissecting this down. What matters is the life of and the choices of human beings already living outside the womb on their own.
With
Isn't
TikTok
that right,
accounts.
little one? What?
With TikTok accounts.
With TikTok accounts. God damn it. All right. Why don't we skip that? There's so much more to whine about. I'm so fucking annoyed. But we got to bring on our guest. Super excited to have him here. He is a Brazil-based independent journalist, and he has a new podcast called Brazil on Fire. The first 3 episodes are out now. Maybe 4 by the time you're hearing this, but listen to it. It's great. Please welcome Michael Fox.
Hello. Thank you so much.
Welcome. So good to have you. Okay.
Loved you in Family Ties. Sorry, someone had to.
It's okay. Thank you.
I'm sure I'm not the first person to make that joke.
Never before.
Nato, you're banished.
Sorry. I loved you on The Good Wife.
Is he in The Good Wife?
Yeah.
God, not a bitchuation room passes without Nato mentioning The Good Wife.
Look,
I don't think I've even seen that one.
It's my guilty pleasure. Good Wife.
Michael, okay, so you have been living in and reporting on Brazil for quite some time now. And you know, we have the election coming up. Tell us exactly when it is and how things are looking between Lula da Silva, former president, now running again, and Jair Bolsonaro.
Yeah, so the first round is October 2nd, so it's in about 3 weeks. Brazil has this 2-round system. So you have the first round, and then 3 weeks later, you have the second round. And if
is there a lightning round?
Wouldn't that be nice? Forget the second round. Let's go lightning. That's great. And basically how it works is if a candidate can get the majority overall of all the votes, then he can win in the first round. And according to the latest polls, that could be Lula. Some of the latest polls show that Lula could actually take it in the first round. Wow. The very latest polls, though, shows that he's increased slightly from 44% up to 46%. Bolsonaro's about 15 points behind him. And then the rest of the candidates are all kind of in the single digits somewhere. Now, what's interesting, and I think what you'll like, Francesca, is, of course, there's always this other poll, right? This poll from the far right. It's called Paraná Pesquisas, which is then coming out, and that's more like Bolsonaro's people are going to follow this poll. And it's the one that's not reputable, but it shows that they're almost neck and neck. And this is what we always see, right? In Latin America, we always see like there's the main polls and there's other poll that's supposed to kind of back like the right-wing candidate, even though it looks like he's going to lose, as a way to then, so he can claim fraud and then, come out, after the elections and say, see, I should have won or whatever. So
Is that explicitly a right-wing poll, or is it a government poll that they've commandeered?
good question. So Paraná Pesquisas, and I don't know enough about them, but it's a small pollster. Paraná is one of the most conservative states. In fact, that's the state where they had the big anti-corruption task force that actually jailed former President Lula. So it's like even just the name of it,
right.
It's really, really sad. But anyway, so that's the latest. And the Lula and Bolsonaro, they're traveling around the country. They're talking with people. Bolsonaro's big thing is these big motorcycle rallies where in every city he goes to, he's on the motorcycle. And he's driving up and down the streets, and people are cheering for him and stuff.
Very Butch.
What?
Very Butch.
and Bolsonaro's big thing is also this kind of religious rhetoric. The evangelicals, that's how he really came into office the last time. That's how he won. And he has this kind of combination, militaristic combination, religious evangelical rhetoric that he's just hammering home because he can't win on, unemployment is skyrocketing. The economy is shit. COVID was terrible. He can't win on actual policies because he didn't have any. So where he's able to win on is family values and God, and saying we're the good ones, he's the evil one, we're God, he's devil, and that type of language.
I mean, just devoid of politics. I think presidents surviving the COVID pandemic politically has been tough internationally. No matter what side they were on, no matter if they believed it was real or like Bolsonaro completely sowed a bunch of doubt and treated it like it was nothing, even though how many people died in Brazil?
Over 650,000. So yeah, and in fact, there was an investigation done by the Senate. Was it earlier this year, last year? Anyway, it was an investigation done by Brazil, and actually came out and accused the president of 8 different crimes, including crimes against humanity, for failing to protect indigenous communities, and for also, I don't know if you guys remember when all of the oxygen ran out in the city of Manaus. Like, people were dying from not having oxygen. It was a huge deal. And in fact, I talk about it briefly in the podcast. Yeah. But that was also blaming his government for not taking measures beforehand, because you could see what was going with the oxygen, and also taking more action afterwards. So yeah, I mean, and they said, literally, people said, came in, infectologists said hundreds of thousands of lives could have been saved. And Bolsonaro just went in the opposite direction.
But there's that sounds like more accountability than we've gotten in this country for similar crimes against humanity of not being prepared. But anyway, let's go back to the election.
Can I ask? I have a stupid question.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is voter turnout like in Brazil?
So voter turnout, this is not a stupid question. This is actually a really important question. Voter turnout
it was a good question. So I was pretending to be dumb, but I'm smart.
So this is not like the US, where 30%, 40% of the population. So in Brazil, it's mandatory. It's your not just your right or your duty, but it's actually required. Now, if you don't turn up to vote, you pay a fine of like, a couple bucks. It's not that big of a deal, but still, like, the percentage of the population that votes is very, very large. Now, what many people will come out and do if they don't want to vote for any of the candidates is they'll vote blank. They'll just kind of write their name on it, and then it's all now computerized now. But they'll pass the thing through, and then nobody gets that vote, or they'll void it. They'll write in, I don't know, Mickey Mouse or whatever else. So that happens to a certain percentage of the votes, but still, the amount of people that turn out to vote, it's huge. It's massive because it's mandatory. So good question.
Good question, Nina. But I had a question about, everyone is talking about, in those same ways that in the lead up to the 2020 election with Trump, that Trump will not accept the results no matter what they are. Or, I mean, if he loses effectively. What's being said about Bolsonaro? We're hearing the exact same thing said about Bolsonaro. He's not going to accept the results. What's going to happen? Where's the military going to come down? How will he try and stay in power? What have you heard? What is the latest? And how much evidence is there to show that he will do just that?
Yeah, I mean, this is the most important question. This is what everybody's asking themselves, and unfortunately, the answer is not easy, right? He himself has said, "Well, if I were going to do a coup, I wouldn't come out and tell you about it." But at the same time, he comes out and says, "Oh, we need to do, military intervention." I mean, this has been his phrase for forever. We need to close Congress. We need to close the Supreme Court. His people have come out and called for military intervention forever, and he has been really following the Trump line, I mean, since before his presidential election, but particularly over the last 2 years, talking about how, there's fraud in the system, talking about how, we need the military there to monitor. In fact, his latest thing a couple of months ago was that he wanted the military to be able to film inside voting booths, to be able to ensure that everything is legitimate, which is nightmarish if you consider that Brazil just 30 years ago ended a military dictatorship that lasted for 24 years. So that's not a good idea. But anyway, so all of this is real. He came out just September 7th was the big bicentennial Independence Day celebrations. They had it just last week. And during that time, Bolsonaro kind of co-opted that and made it into these big pro-Bolsonaro rallies around the country. And literally that morning, he came out and he was mentioning other complicated times in the history. And he mentioned the 1964 coup. And then he said, well, history can repeat itself. It can happen again. So he's kind of laying this undertone of this is going to happen, and making everybody super nervous about it. And that's for a reason, because people throughout his government, and since before, look, the military dictatorship, it hangs over everything in Brazil like this dark shadow. It always has. In fact, just 3 years ago, it was right after COVID was kind of spiking. It was April of that year, of 2020. My wife was posting stuff on Facebook. Bolsonaro was really laying it into the governors. He was laying it into Congress and Supreme Court. He was talking about potential coup, whatever, anything else. And my wife's, her dad actually wrote us and said, "Hey, have Sylvia please not post on Facebook, because things could get dangerous." So that's how much of a shadow the dictatorship hangs over on top of everything. And here's the thing: we don't really know what could happen, and we don't know exactly how the military lines up. There was a study that was done that was just released last week, in which it showed that it looked like the Air Force and the Navy were the two branches of government that were more closely in line with Bolsonaro's misinformation about fraud, potential fraud in the elections, whatever. And they might be the branches of the government that might be more aligned with helping Bolsonaro to enact some sort of a coup, January 6th moment. But again, it's hard to say. Would all the military be on board? The other thing that is really important to this question is the fact that Bolsonaro, since the end of the dictatorship, you basically have the military has been broken into these two branches. One of them, which is the majority, was down with re-democratization. The other one, which is Bolsonaro's, and it's smaller, wanted to stay with the coup. And so at this point, it's really hard to say. The one other thing I'd say, Francesca, is that civil society, social movements, people in Brazil do not want that. Less than 10% of the population said they want a coup. And in fact, they were out in the streets marching for democracy on August 11th. More than 1 million people signed this letter in defense of democracy, saying, above all, we want to defend whatever the results are of this election are. So that's really key, in the sense that it's a different moment than what we saw 50 years ago with the Brazilian coup. And many people are saying, even if Bolsonaro tries it, it's not likely he's going to be successful. And that's what we're hoping. Right?
It's interesting because it's, I was just going to say, because the United States, usually we're the one backing the coups elsewhere. And so I felt like we were caught flat-footed, like, wait a minute. And, Trump supporters do not know how to identify a coup when it happens. They're like, yeah, hell yeah. Democracy? What? So there's a less of appreciation for it, I think, in this country. Nato.
I wanted to ask a question about Lula, because Lula was president before in the early aughts, and what's your assessment of how Lula and the Workers' Party of 2022 is different from the Workers' Party of the 2003 period?
God, this is like a dissertation, which I won't give you right now, but I'm going to try and do this really tight. But I mean, this is a huge question. First off, just remember that when Lula left office in 2010, January 1st, he had an approval rating that was almost 90%. I mean, it was huge, right? So that's really key. He is the icon. I mean, if you could mix like Mahatma Gandhi and Obama and Cesar Chavez, because Lula, he comes from the fight against the dictatorship from the end of like the Beyonce, everybody.
Right.
That's Lula. Now, remember, he was jailed on these corruption charges. And that's what blocked him from running in the 2018 elections. And then those were absolved, essentially. He was let out of jail. And here's the thing. They had like, and we're not going to get into the intricacies of the anti-corruption lawsuit, but basically it was found that the judge who had been pushing this anti-corruption lawsuit for years, Sergio Moro, had been biased against Lula and so many others. And in fact, the Supreme Court came out and said that the case against Lula in that case should not even have been tried in Curitiba. And at the same time, there were 26 or 27 different lawsuits brought up against Lula for different levels of corruption and stuff. And all of them have been tossed out by the courts. So it was actually attacks by, the use of lawfare, the use of law as a way to try and tank Lula and tank the Workers' Party. Now, this was really key, and it's important that you did bring this up because this was one of the main things that happened back in 2018 and why Bolsonaro found his way to come into power. Bolsonaro would not have won in 2018 if Lula hadn't been jailed and if there hadn't been this huge anti-corruption kind of scandal that was trying to tank the left and tank the Workers' Party. So the Workers' Party was really tainted at that point. But since these leaks from The Intercept came out back in 2019, showing how Judge Sergio Moro had worked together with the prosecutors to try folks on the left, how he had worked to try and tank the left, then that whole kind of lawsuit, it's kind of been, people are just over it. They're just like, So of course you have Bolsonaro supporters, and Bolsonaro has about a third of the country. And of course, they still believe that Lula is the most corrupt politician there ever was in the history of the country, and that the Workers' Party is the worst thing ever, and that they're trying to create a dictatorship of the proletariat and communism and whatever, yada, yada, yada. But the reality is that would be, that's right. But the reality is that Lula, he is still one of the most, especially now after he's been absolved, essentially, that people are on board, and people are much more willing to vote for Lula than they would be, but almost any other candidate. And that's why the chances of Bolsonaro winning in this election are just, even if he has a third of the country, you just can't see how, he can come back and make it work. Lula is up ahead in the polls, and he's most likely going to win.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. First of all, I hope that does happen. And I also hope that, we can check in about, Lula being part of the pink wave in Latin America is always super fascinating to me, and the ways that that pink wave kind of lost its edge and sort of calcified and really needed to support successors. I mean, Dilma Rousseff was one of them, but she obviously also got taken down in the corruption bullshit that happened. But anyway, I guess I wanted to just also remind people that Lula did serve almost two terms, and you can serve a third, I believe, or more terms, but just not consecutively. Can you serve two more terms?
Yeah, so that's how it works, and I don't know how. I should know this. I don't know how many times, but not consecutively. That's the point. You go two, and then you move on. Then your successor, and that's when Dilma Rousseff won in 2010, and then was then president for, like you said, a term and a half before she was taken out by a coup, and that's how come he's allowed to serve again. Exactly, great point.
With this, and basically like a parliamentarian coup, correct?
That's right. That's exactly what happened with Dilma. And in fact, just to put a pinpoint on that, she was taken out for they called them budgetary maneuvers, and it's basically when you pull funds from one part of the government to another in order to balance the budget. That's what she was doing. Every administration does it. God. The day after she was ousted from power and the Senate voted to impeach her, the Senate then voted to legalize the exact thing that she had just done. I mean, I remember this, mind-boggling.
No,
it's terrifying. So
it is terrifying.
Does the fact that Bolsonaro was massively impacted with feces affect the election in any way at all?
Massively impacted with what?
Feces? Wasn't he hospitalized for having?
Oh, that's right.
He had a huge amount of. He had doo-doo removed from his stomach through his nose, and I want everyone to know that.
Yeah. It should impact the election, but we haven't been hearing about it very often.
Yeah.
So
he had so much shit in him that the shit gets a vote.
Yeah. It was bad. It was
The
ugly.
shit became sentient and was like,
Now-
we're voting for Lula.
What's interesting though is that he used that moment to not have to go to debates. Right. He said, well, I just got stabbed and I'm sick. So they said, well, you can Zoom in from home. That's fine. He said, no, it's okay. I just won't do it. So
Like, how long after that procedure are you just straight tasting shit in your mouth? Like I'm sorry. And that to me is the best we can hope for, or maybe not, but for Bolsonaro seeing his day. My question about Bolsonaro is, what's been the impact in just 4 years of him in power? And then let's say he does win. What would 4 more years look like?
So many people that I've been interviewing over the last few years, they just keep bringing up this phrase of policies of death, the policies of death. And it's funny because I've been going back in doing this podcast. I've been going back and listening to interviews I did, like his first year in power and in like the days leading up to his inauguration. And they were saying the same thing. And then I went back and said, God, that's what we saw under COVID. Like hundreds of thousands of people died, like completely just terrifying, what do you call it? Response to COVID, just saying that it was just this, it was nothing. It was just a cold. And if you take vaccines, well, they might turn you into a crocodile. So that's just COVID. You've seen this complete deconstruction of state institutions that were there to protect, whether it was the environment or indigenous peoples or health, or for instance, the ministry of the women's ministry is now they combined the women's ministry with the ministry of health, and now they called it the ministry of family. So it's the ministry of human rights, human rights, women, and family. And then they have an evangelical pastor who's been in charge of that for almost the entire time in office. So
that's insane to me. Yeah. I listened to that bit of your podcast, and I'm just like, wow, that is so all this progress, and then just completely rolled back.
And then and this question about, the Amazon, I think, is the great metaphor. It's the great symbol. And we saw the Amazon fires back the first year. Everybody was up in arms, 2019. This year, it's been worse. The Amazon fires have been worse, but you haven't heard anything about them because there's so much other shit going down that like people just can't handle it. But it's worse than ever. We saw more invasions into indigenous territories than ever. It's happening in this skyrocketing level. People are actually taking indigenous land and then selling it to other people, to cattle farmers and cattle ranchers. And that's just the Amazon. In fact, my last episode is all about that. But so it's been this complete deconstruction of the state. And then overall, the last thing, and I talk about this as well, is how he's just unleashed this virulent white supremacy, fascism, sexism, homophobia across the country, just like Donald Trump, right? And that has been like this undercurrent throughout his administration. He's basically legitimized it and said, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And so that's 4 years. If he is allowed to stay in office, there was an article that just came out in The Nation, and they talked about this. If he's allowed to stay in office, the destruction of the Amazon is going to be acute. Massive. And then we're going to see more of the same, except for the fact that he's not going to have to say, oh, maybe I'll get elected, whatever else. He can just, roll through what he wants to. Right. So no, it's really concerning what could happen if he stays in office.
I think for people who haven't been paying attention, listening to your podcast has been so eye-opening, at least for me. Like, I've been paying somewhat attention, but the similarities of Trump and Bolsonaro are insane. The evangelical vote, the culture war, the strongman bullshit. And I love the way you explain and you fascism, and the way that fascism, it's more than authoritarianism and a lack of belief in democracy. It does have that strong current of misogyny, of like political violence, I think is something we forget to name when we talk about fascism. But like, just all the little stunts, the ways that he hounded a gay lawmaker, the ways that he, is just a total bully, and people love that about him. Like, that has been insane. So that culture war piece, how is that resonating with Brazilians every day? Like, how has that even worked? In terms of like reeling them into that idea of the culture war?
I mean, it runs so deep, just like in the States, right? It's run so deep. And that's the thing is Brazilians and Bolsonaro, the Brazilians really look to the States. I mean, and this is something that people don't really understand, right? If Brazil is roughly half the size of South America and has roughly half the population of South America. And Brazilians, when they look to another country to who they emulate and who they really resonate with, they look to the US. I mean, as you know, stop. I know. But even in terms of like style, right? In so many countries in Latin America, men, you're never going to catch them in shorts, or wearing flip flops or whatever else. But in Brazil, everybody's in shorts, flip flops. They got their ball caps. Like this is like, there's so many layers in which you're looking to the U.S. And so Trump, he adds this extra layer on. I'm
sure that Brazil would have based their culture on Uruguay.
Yeah, that's right.
If only. By the way, first of all, I just want to underscore, this is a stupid point, but the fact that Brazilians are one of the few Latin Americans that wear shorts is huge. Like, no matter how hot it would get living in Argentina, nobody fucking wears shorts. It's just not a thing, because it's like nobody wants to see your legs and, wear some goddamn pants. Even women, just pants. Or a long skirt, but that's really funny. Sorry.
It doesn't seem like that's big of a deal, but it actually is. Like that's
it is weird.
Nobody wears shorts in Cuba either. Like it was like you wear slacks and a shirt, a pressed shirt. You manicure your eyebrows. If you're gonna like walk around the block, you better look fly.
Exactly. So the connection, the parallels, the reason why he sees Trump as this huge beacon for everything he does, it's huge. And the culture war, look, it's been deep and it's been growing over, particularly like in the States, it's been growing for the last 30 years, and it's been growing for Brazil for the last 2 decades. And something I bring into the podcast, which is so huge, and we don't get it in the States, is this guy Olavo de Carvalho, who is this philosopher guy who basically he renewed the far right in Brazil, and he's been doing it from Virginia. Like I mean, he's dead now. He died from COVID earlier this year. But he had this whole philosophy courses in which he was training thousands of Brazilians on his kind of far right ideology, and much of it kind of culture war stuff. Basically, all of it. What do you call it? Conspiracy theorist. But and then taking what we know and then flipping it all up into its head and teaching people how to not have a debate, but actually attack your opponent, because that's so key, right? In culture war, it's so key. In fascism is about how to like not just have a conversation and talk about the issues that I stand for and you stand for, but it's actually about no, you are wrong and I am right, and we're going to take you out. And the other thing, Francesca, talking about this question of fascism and these ties between Brazil and the U.S. This is the whole reason why I wanted to do this podcast, because I wanted to show U.S. reality from within like another country. I wanted us to see that mirror within the United States, and because you listen to the podcast and it's not overt, right? But I wanted people to hear the podcast and go, wait, this is really similar to the U.S. Like without anybody saying it. I wanted that to just be like this undertone and be like, oh God. And it's real, because here's the thing: regardless of who wins this next election, Bolsonaro has set the country on fire, and he's unleashed this renewed fascism like Brazil hasn't seen in forever, and unleashed this white supremacy that Brazil hasn't seen forever. The number of Nazi, and this is in the podcast, the episode that's released today, but the number of neo-Nazi cells increased roughly 60% under Bolsonaro's first two or 3 years in power. So this is happening. And what does that mean? Let's say Lula comes into power. You can't just put the genie back in the bottle. This stuff is still happening, just like in the States, right? Yeah. All of Trump's crazy, virulent far right supporters, they're still there. They haven't gone anywhere. And so that's what's really concerning. This isn't just a story about Brazil. It's a story about the U.S. at the same time, right?
I really wanted to bring this in, and it's bizarre, and it happened, I believe a week ago when a Brazilian man attempted to kill the vice president of Argentina, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, and was not successful. But what's interesting, there's a weird, just speaking on like the international way that fascism and fascists and sort of like white supremacists are winking and high-fiving each other. There was an Argentine man in La Plata who was like online praising this Brazilian guy for his attempted assassination. That dude apparently runs a cultural center in La Plata called the Kyle Rittenhouse Cultural Center. So to give you a sense, you're getting like, again, the triad, the multi, talk about, you know, and people who like hate internationalism. This is white supremacist internationalism right here, where there's a cult Kyle Rittenhouse. I didn't even know that people in Argentina knew about fucking Kyle Rittenhouse. And it's just deeply, deeply scary. So, and I also wanted to name that like Carvalho is the brains behind a lot of these movements in Brazil. He's Bannon-esque. I mean, Bannon, I guess, wishes he could be Carvalho, and then, or Carvalho. So Bannon, Carvalho, and then like Dugin in Russia, kind of like very ultra-nationalist. Again, Dugin's daughter was killed, and I think that car bomb was like actually aimed at him. But just, there's a cross-continental sort of patchwork of both fascist politicians and then their thinkers and then their little martyrs.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And you know what? They're linked up with this religion or philosophy called traditionalism, which is this far right philosophy, which I'm not going to get into now because it's super complicated. But there's an amazing book by this professor from the University of Colorado who maps it all out and maps the connections between Bannon. In fact, Bannon and Carvalho, they finally met at the U.S. Embassy in Washington just recently, just a couple of years ago. Yeah. And in fact, that was around the same time that Carvalho went, and he actually went to the CIA. Bolsonaro was the first Brazilian president ever to visit the U.S. CIA. He did that, by the way, before he met with Secret Service in Brazil, just to show you where his allegiance lies, right? But so that's exactly it. It's so good that you brought that up, because you have the thinkers that are kind of trying to push this far right ideology. Then you have kind of these kind of more massive movements. And here's the thing. The idea of fascism, and this is so important, the other reason why I wanted to do this was so that we actually start to talk about what fascism is and understand this. But it's, you know, it's about hate. It's about violent discourse. It's about one charismatic leader and building a movement of people kind of in support of that charismatic leader toward dictatorship. And of course, using kind of fake news, right, and misinformation to try and get, you know, achieve your goals, whatever those might be. And that's kind of what's behind all this stuff, you know? So frightening.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We have to leave it there, but thank you for enduring NATO's dumb questions, and thank you.
I have 11 more dumb questions.
Poor NATO.
No, but please come back on in the next, like whenever, you know, whatever, like early soon, so awesome. We can do a breakdown of what happened and an assessment. You know, I think NATO's right on. I mean, I sure as shit hope that Lula pulls through, but there's a lot to defend and there's a lot to undo. And Brazil's got, and just like we all have, I mean, it's like, you know, touching base with Biden, and you're like, you only have a little bit of time before fascists come back into power. So no offense to Lula. I didn't mean to say that Lula's like Biden. They're not the same, of course.
You're going to get emails. People are going to be shitty on Twitter.
What are you thinking?
Right. Everybody check out Brazil on Fire, all podcast platforms. Check out Michael's work. He's been writing about Latin America for so many years now. And thank you.
Thank you.
Follow him at mfox_. What was that?
US.
Us. On Twitter, mfox_.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Nato.
What up, bro?
Have you been watching the Lord of the Rings prequel?
I'm about an episode and a half in.
Okay. And how long did it take you to get triggered by the hobbits of color and the hot elves?
Excuse me, Francesca. They're Harfoots. They're not hobbits. They're clearly. What I love about the Harfoots that are Hobbit-esque but not identified as hobbits is that it's clearly, you know, this is important, implies that evolution exists in Middle Earth, that they're not hobbits yet, but they're
on their way.
They're like the Australopithecus of hobbits. Like they haven't evolved into full hobbitry yet. So, and also like the
That's
hobbits are
funny.
like very like, 18th century British countryside, like very prim and proper and like mannered. And these people they're all like dirty and they have like white person dreadlocks and, like don't have their shit together. So there's like some aspect of like both social development as well. that
Yeah, they
like
haven't settled on the Shire, right? They're nomadic
Right,
at this
they're
point.
nomadic. Like so, like at some point, they're gonna be like, you know what? High tea is cool as fuck. Like that's gonna be like season 2 of the series.
So, okay, NATO's going real deep.
I'm
For those
sorry.
of you who haven't watched, there's no spoilers, although Lord of the Rings has been out for forever. And Rings of Power it's good. And yes, there are elves and hobbits and other mythical creatures who are not played by just white actors, unlike the Lord of the Rings. And if you didn't know, racists are mad and they are very, very loud. They are not only trolling these actors, they are review bombing the show, giving it 1 star, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like it's en masse. It's not just a few people. It's not just a few tweets. It is definitely a coordinated campaign. And it's pretty at once hilarious and scary at the same time. Talk about the culture war. They're claiming that their childhood is being ruined because there's a black elf.
I mean, it's actually worse than like it's not just that there weren't actors of color on the original Lord of the Rings, but like in the Peter Jackson series, there were actors of color, but they were like the cast
Orcs.
or like the savage men of the South or whatever that came to
Right.
fight Gondor.
Right.
So like the triumph of I'm gonna go deep again.
Go deep.
Of in the original series, visually of Aragorn and the hobbits and the elves was presented in highly racialized terms as a triumph of whiteness when they destroyed the ring. And now I guess we have
Wait. Who destroyed whiteness?
no, it's a triumph of whiteness when Frodo destroyed the ring.
Oh.
And it was a triumph of whiteness that had to be consummated at the end of the Return of the King with about an hour and a half of slow motion crying denouement.
Wait, you're saying this is what racists think, or this is what?
No,
Because
this is
Tolkien didn't think that.
No, but I don't know. I don't know that Tolkien thought it, but in the original film trilogy that Peter Jackson put out, that like the visuals of it are very racial.
Oh, got it.
Saying.
I mean, I kept on, because of when it came out, I was like, this is George W. Bush. This is, Sauron and the Eye are Mordor's basically the war machine, and we should stop it. But like, that was just my own worldview plastered on top of it. The point is this: these are fictional fucking characters. Hobbits, Hardfoots, elves, whomever else.
Dwarves, bro.
Dwarves don't exist in the real world. We're not talking about little people. Don't exist. And yet they're freaking out. And so I want to ask you, Nato, if we could drive the knife even further, how would we ruin white childhood? Okay. I just want to say, I feel like women haven't been freaking out about when like Brandy played Cinderella. Remember that? Everyone loved that. No one was like, ew. But now, of course, you've got mostly men also freaking out about the fact that like the new Little Mermaid is black. And like, we've seen the videos of like little young black girls watching the Little Mermaid trailer and like going like, oh, she looks like me. Like it's just, it's very, very, very sweet. And how could you be mad about that? So I'm sure it's not only men, but it's mostly men. So here's my thing. I think Inspector Gadget, we're going to just ruin more white child. Inspector Gadget is black. Okay. And he works with Cop Watch and he's just roots out dirty cops. He like films them and he figures out ways to like trap killer cops.
Cool.
I think Rambo is Vietnamese. That's right. We're doing a Vietnamese Rambo. And Now it's real payback. No. Real fucking payback. We are kidnapping Henry Kissinger and we're torturing his little ass. Super Mario Brothers are Latino. That's right. It makes way more sense. And because they'll actually do a good job painting. And yeah, that I'm gonna ruin the childhood. Super Mario Brothers are Latino, and Princess, what's her name? Princess Toadstool. She's Indian. That's right.
Can I make the Terminator Jewish?
Yes.
I'll be back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
Oh
with
my
me if you want
God.
to live.
That's very funny. Right. Yeah, the Terminator is Jewish and autistic, right? Because that's how he like it's not his like machinery that he can like identify you and who you are and like your weight and height and like what your name is. It's just his like autism kicking in. He's neurodivergent.
Look, I'm right here. You could just say my name if you want to.
It's just Nato.
Oh, you want to talk about autistic Jews? I'm right here. Come on.
I love that.
I was talking to my brother this week, and I was like, "Are we on the spectrum?"
Well, he might not be. Are you late to see? This is what TikTok is about, Nato. Everyone goes on TikTok and talks about how they're neurodivergent. So this is you have to find that beat.
Yeah, I got to find that beat.
Anything else? Anything that you would have been like, oh my God, but that G.I. Joe is white.
Right.
With Care Bears.
You know, I think Ronald McDonald should be Nicaraguan.
Uh-huh.
And what else? And
that's very specific.
It's very specific. I know. And I think, I don't know. I mean,
I liked mostly animals. See, that's my thing is like I was really into animals, but I also was into She-Ra as when I was really, 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 really little. And I think if there were more like, yeah, Black Barbie came out, like Brown Barbie came out when I was little, but like if the main event, if like the protagonist, that's the whole thing that we came out like when we were younger, it was like, yeah, there's inclusion, but the protagonists are always white. And I think that does something to your brain.
And also, I mean, it also felt like when we were younger, like there would be inclusion, but it would be also like very stereotypical and like they'd be like G.I. Joe is all white guys and the black one or whatever,
exactly.
You know, like and his name is Tyrone and he's got an afro and like
right.
And
it's just Mr. T, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, so so like because you wouldn't get like multiple flavors of the diverse representation.
Right. No, exactly. And now that there's like, they've got more than one line. Ugh. Anywho, everybody, calm down. Speak back to the person who's like here's what I will say. Anyone who bats an eye at the fact that like the dwarf wife in the Rings of Power is like, I think she's Iranian and African. She's like a really cool mix. Like anyone who bats an eye that there's a black elf, like you might be a racist. That might be a sign that you might be racist. Like if you feel a little tinge of like, that's not right, that's on you. That's on nobody else but you. Nobody's thinking that. Nobody cares.
It's
nobody
cares.
I
mean, it's it's like we went through this with the Lady Ghostbusters, and we went through it with like John Boyega as the Black Stormtrooper, and people were like there are no Black Stormtroopers, or there was
God,
when
Stormtrooper, the guys who wear helmets constantly.
or when Michael B. Jordan played the Human Torch in one of the iterations of the Fantastic Four. Like there are people who get upset about that stuff, and it's easy to be like, well, that's dumb. This is all fantasy. But then those people are like, and that's why I'm becoming the QAnon shaman, and I'm going to go rub my dick on Nancy Pelosi's desk on January 6th.
Yeah.
And like that thought process, like I've always thought that part of whiteness is that there's some level of privilege that you have to give up as a white person, and then you just freak the fuck out. And I just haven't hit mine yet. And that there would be something where people would be like, the day would come where well, Nato, in order to build a just society and have freedom for everybody, here's something that you have to give up. And I'd be like, oh no, now I have to kill everyone. I don't know what that thing is. I can't imagine what that thing is, but I sort of feel like
cocktails,
right? Sorry, Nato. In order to have a just society, you
can't have a bar cart. You'd be like,
you just have to eat at Cheesecake Factory forevermore. And then I'd be like, oh, maybe fascism is good.
Nato Green, everybody, please, if you haven't already, download his albums on Bandcamp. He is wonderful. He is a homie, and hopefully he'll join me for a very, very quick Patreon only show right after this. We're going to talk about J.K. Rowling a little bit more because I need someone who actually has read all of Harry Potter.
I'm ready.
Okay. Nato, be very well. Take good care. And thank you guys for being here. Thanks for all of your super chats. Thanks for your comments, your likes, your love. Reading a few of them right now. Moondragon, here's to my first live Tuesday. Let's go for Antifa. Thank you so much for that super chat. Camperman says, Eyes Wide Shut, that Kubrick masterpiece. Let's see. Squirrely Coney, can we tweet that quote that the Queen liked to fuck? Oh yeah, once you tweet it, it's just basically canon. I mean, it's real. Pow Nobody Now on Twitch says, I don't wish death on them, but old people do tend to die. I think this is about the Queen. Winston 121880 is talking about the ads on Twitch. These ads are fire. I had no idea in just 10 months I could be a dental assistant. Hashtag life-changing. I am running a couple more ads. I apologize. I'm trying to run them at the beginning of the show. And so it goes during the song. And anyway, subscribe. What are you doing? Alex Samaras, I hate how the right has co-opted the term late-term abortion to mean in latter parts of the pregnancy. Late term specifically means after the expected pregnancy term. Totes. LM says this is about abortion. There's no brain to receive the pain signals. Yeah, how can you get the pain signals when also we're talking about abortion. You're already against abortion, so now you're against the pain of abortion. What if there was painless abortion? I just don't get it. Winston also, women are just human 3D printers to Republicans. Indeed. Mayor Watt on Twitch, the deaths in Brazil due to COVID ratio is the same as the US's. Mm-hmm. And our one-term president did not survive. Don M, thank you so much. Here's to all the Virgos. Hell yeah, I did just have a birthday. Happy birthday if your birthday is in the Virgo sign, because I love you. Today is Fiona Apple's birthday. Another fucking star. And I have some really great comments. WolfGlen99 saying about the characters of color. I did notice they had darker skin. Did it matter? No. Yeah, exactly. You notice it and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Anyway, back to the story. Smatty Smat says the genre is fucking fantasy. And then Kamoon Yu on Twitch. Yeah, the skin color was the unbelievable part of the story. The Little Mermaid purists right now, Domini Arma says, are like, she has to be white. The deep ocean can't get sunlight for Ariel to develop melanin. So fucking good. All right. And with that, the fart song. I just got to thank all the new patrons at $10 or more. Thank you so much to Mick, to Savas, to Jack F, to Jolene M, who just joined right before the show. Thank you to the big tippers, Sheila L, to Jeffrey G, who says tips for the Bambina. Muchas gracias. Oh, grazie. To the Twitch subs, Kathleen, Blue 83, 8319, Candace Lynn 112, Willie Gus, Speak Minds 1, Adam DeBomb, Dragon Zero Kid, Tempoden 918, Marcus Aurelius 75, Dory B, A Trolfy, and Empire 6 who subbed during the show. Did I miss anyone? Oh, Smatty Smats Matt resubscribe or subscribe for 1 month at tier 1. You're wonderful. Thank you, guys. We stream every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Thank you to Paige Oamek, Maximillien Inhoff, Alexandra Ornes, and Andy Vasoyan for helping me out with this goddamn labor of love. Follow us on Twitter at Bitchuation Pod, TikTok and Instagram at Franny Fio. And remember, we're going to talk about the elections the next coming weeks, and it's going to be good. But until then, fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, and don't just bitch about it, be about it. And what I meant by last week when I said, right, make calls, I meant make calls for the midterms. That's what I meant. Okay, bye.